She stormed in, pointed at me like I was trash, and yelled, "Security! This man is trespassing." The officers looked confused until I pulled out the deed and said, "Actually, I own the building." The look on her face, worth every second of silent compliance. Alex Chen stood behind the bar of the Rustic Vine, methodically polishing a wine glass as he surveyed his establishment with quiet pride. At 34, he poured his life savings and 5 years of backbreaking work into transforming the once dilapidated building into Portland's most talked-about wine bar. Tonight marked their second anniversary, and despite the steady rain outside, every table was filled with customers enjoying carefully curated wine flights and artisanal cheese boards. "Perfect pour as always, boss," remarked Jenna, his assistant manager, as she slid past with a tray of appetizers. Alex smiled. "Thanks. Everything's running smoothly tonight." The words had barely left his mouth when the front door flew open with such force that the bell above it nearly detached from its mount. A gust of rain-scented air preceded the entrance of a woman in her mid-40s, impeccably dressed in designer attire that seemed at odds with her thunderous expression. Her highlighted blonde bob cut was plastered to one side of her face from the rain, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "Unacceptable," she announced to the entire room, voice piercing through the jumbled jazz music. "Absolutely unacceptable." The murmur of conversation died as every patron turned toward the commotion. Alex exchanged a quick glance with Jenna, who raised her eyebrows in the universal signal for your turn to handle this one. "Welcome to the Rustic Vine," Alex said calmly, setting down the wine glass and making his way around the bar. "How can I help you this evening?" The woman, whom Alex would later come to think of simply as Karen, locked eyes with him and advanced like a heat-seeking missile. "Your valet just refused to park my car. In this downpour. Do you have any idea who I am?" Alex maintained his professional smile while mentally processing this information. "I'm sorry for the confusion, ma'am, but we don't offer valet parking service here." "Don't lie to me," Karen jabbed a manicured finger inches from his face. "That young man outside in the black jacket took the keys from the couple in front of me." Understanding dawned on Alex. That would be Marcus from the steakhouse across the street. "They offer valet parking, but we're not affiliated with them." "So you're telling me," Karen said, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "that I have to go back out in the rain and park my own car? After driving across town specifically to try your supposedly award-winning wine selection?" Alex gestured toward the window. "I'd be happy to lend you an umbrella, or if you prefer, you're welcome to wait inside while one of your party parks the car." "I'm alone," Karen snapped, her voice rising again. "And I'm at parking 4 blocks away in these shoes." By now, several customers were openly watching, some with expressions of discomfort, others with barely concealed amusement. Alex was acutely aware that how he handled the next few moments would set the tone for the rest of his anniversary evening. "Perhaps I can recommend the steakhouse instead," Alex offered diplomatically. "Their wine selection is also quite good, and they do have valet service." Something in Karen's expression shifted then, her eyes narrowing as if she spotted a weakness. "No, I've made up my mind to dine here. I've heard too much about this place to leave without experiencing it myself." She glanced around the fully occupied tables. "I'll need that corner table by the window." Alex followed her gaze to where a young couple was celebrating what appeared to be an engagement, judging by the ring box on the table and the woman's glistening eyes. "I'm afraid all our tables are reserved this evening," Alex explained, "but I'd be happy to take your number and call you when." "Unacceptable," Karen interrupted, her voice once again commanding the attention of the entire establishment. "I want to speak to the manager. Immediately." Alex drew a deep breath, already sensing where this encounter was headed. "I am the manager on duty tonight." Karen's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Perfect. Then you're exactly the person who needs to hear this. Either you find me a table right now, or I'm calling the police to report you for discrimination." The gauntlet had been thrown, and as Alex looked into Karen's entitled eyes, he knew the evening was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would prove memorable for everyone involved. The entire wine bar had fallen silent, all eyes fixed on the confrontation unfolding before them. Alex maintained his composure despite Karen's threat, though a muscle twitched almost imperceptibly in his jaw. "Ma'am, I understand you're disappointed, but threatening to call the police over a fully booked restaurant isn't going to change our seating capacity," Alex explained, his voice level. "I'd be happy to make a reservation for you another evening." Karen's face flushed scarlet. "Do you have any idea who my husband is? He's on the city council, and one phone call from me could have this place shut down for health violations by tomorrow morning." A few patrons exchanged uncomfortable glances. Jenna moved closer to Alex, a silent show of support as tension thickened the air. "I'd assure you we maintain the highest standards of cleanliness here," Alex replied, "and our health inspection record is impeccable. Now, if you'd like, I can offer you a complimentary glass of our reserve peanut noir while you wait for a table at another establishment." The peace offering only seemed to fuel Karen's indignation. She dug into her designer handbag and pulled out her phone. "That's it. I'm calling the police," she announced loudly, fingers already dialing. "I'm being refused service based on discrimination, and I want this man arrested." Several patrons audibly gasped. The newly engaged couple by the window looked mortified, their celebration completely derailed. "On what grounds exactly am I discriminating against you?" Alex asked, genuinely confused. "You're serving everyone else by refusing me." Karen snapped back, phone pressed to her ear. "Hello, police? I need to report an incident of discrimination at the Rustic Vine Wine Bar on Pine Street." Alex exchanged a bewildered look with Jenna, who mouthed, "Is she serious?" He gave a small nod in confirmation. While Karen was busy describing her emergency to the dispatcher, Alex quietly asked Jenna to check on the other customers and offer them a round of complimentary dessert wine for the disruption. He then stepped away to retrieve something from his office. Karen finished her call with a triumphant look. "They're sending someone right away. I hope you're prepared to explain yourself to the authorities." "I'm prepared to explain that we're fully booked and unable to accommodate walk-ins tonight," Alex replied calmly, returning with a small folder in hand. "It's unfortunate you feel the need to involve law enforcement in what is simply a capacity issue." "Don't patronize me," Karen hissed. "I know exactly what's happening here. You took one look at me and decided I wasn't the kind of customer you wanted in your precious little wine bar." Alex opened his mouth to respond when the front door opened again. This time, it was a rain-soaked man in his 50s with a distinguished salt and pepper beard, looking both confused and concerned. "Margaret, what's going on? I've been calling you for 20 minutes, the man said, approaching Karen. Karen's demeanor instantly transformed. "Richard, thank goodness you're here. This person," she gestured dismissively at Alex, "is refusing to seat me and has been incredibly rude. I'd already called the police." Richard looked mortified. "You called the police because a restaurant is full." "Margaret, we talked about this after the incident at the golf club." "It's not about that," Karen insisted. "It's about the principle. You could easily move someone to seat us." The front door opened once more, revealing two police officers shaking raindrops from their uniforms. They surveyed the scene with practiced neutrality. "We received a call about a disturbance," the taller officer inquired. Karen immediately stepped forward. "Yes, officers. I'm the one who called. This man," and she pointed dramatically at Alex, "has refused to serve me while accommodating everyone else. I want him arrested for discrimination." The officers exchanged a quick glance before the senior officer spoke. "Ma'am, refusing service alone isn't necessarily discrimination. Can you elaborate on the specific basis for your claim?" As Karen launched into an increasingly embellished account of events, Alex quietly handed the folder he retrieved to the second officer. The officer opened it, studied its contents for a moment, then whispered something to his partner. The senior officer nodded and politely interrupted Karen mid-sentence. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but it appears there's been a misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" Karen demanded. "I want this man in handcuffs. Right now." The officer cleared his throat uncomfortably. "That might be difficult considering the documentation I've just been shown." "What documentation?" Karen snapped. The officer turned to Alex with newfound respect. "Mr. Chen, I apologize for the disturbance to your establishment this evening." Karen's eyes widened. "Wait, what? You know him?" The Rustic Vine had transformed from a sophisticated wine bar into an impromptu theater, with every patron now fully invested in the unfolding drama. Karen stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water as she processed Alex's revelation. "Owner?" She finally sputtered. "That's impossible. The owner is Alexander Chen." Alex finished for her, extending his business card to the officers. "I designed, built, and opened this place 2 years ago today, actually. We're celebrating our anniversary." A smattering of supportive applause broke out among the regular customers. The engagement couple by the window even raised their glasses in a silent toast to Alex. Karen's husband, Richard, placed a restraining hand on her arm, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and resignation. "Margaret, let's just go. Please." But Karen was not one to surrender easily. She shook off her husband's hand and squared her shoulders. "Fine. You're the owner. That doesn't change the fact that you've treated me abominably. I'll have you know I'm a Yelp Elite reviewer with over 10,000 followers on Instagram. One post for me about this experience, and your precious anniversary could be your last." Alex maintained his professional demeanor, though something hardened in his eyes. "Ms. Peterson," Karen snapped. "Margaret Peterson. Ms. Peterson, you've disrupted our business, threatened me with false police reports, attempted to leverage supposed political connections to intimidate my staff, and are now threatening to damage our reputation online because we couldn't accommodate your walk-in request on our busiest night of the year." The taller police officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, making false reports to law enforcement is actually an offense. Mr. Chen would be within his rights to press charges. Karen Blanche suddenly seeming to realize the precariousness of her position. Richard stepped forward quickly. There will be no need for that, he said, shooting a warning glance at his wife. We sincerely apologize for the destruction. Margaret has been under a lot of stress lately with her mother's illness. Alex considered the couple for a long moment. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his decision. Jenna had returned to his side, ready to support whatever call he made. No charges, Alex finally said to the officers, but I am serious about the trespass warning. The officers nodded, then turned to Karen. Ma'am, you'll need to leave the premises immediately. If you return, you could face arrest for criminal trespass. The full weight of consequences finally seemed to register with Karen. Her face crumpled slightly, the bravado draining away. For a brief moment, Alex caught a glimpse of something vulnerable beneath the entitled exterior. Embarrassment, perhaps, or even shame. This is ridiculous, she muttered, but the fight had gone out of her voice. Absolutely ridiculous. Richard took his wife's elbow, guiding her toward the door with practiced ease that spoke of similar situations in the past. We're leaving. Again, my apologies, Mr. Chen. As they reached the entrance, Alex made an impulsive decision. He strode quickly to the bar, retrieved an umbrella with the Rustic Vines logo, and approached the couple. It's still pouring out there, he said, offering the umbrella to Richard. Please take this. Karen stared at the umbrella as if it might bite her. Richard, however, accepted it with a grateful nod. That's very kind of you, considering, he trailed off, glancing at his wife. Alex shrugged. Consider it a reminder that not every establishment is out to get you, Ms. Peterson. We genuinely couldn't accommodate you tonight, but perhaps another time, with a reservation. You might have a different experience. Karen pursed her lips but said nothing. Richard guided her outside, opening the umbrella against the relentless rain. Through the window, Alex watched them disappear down the street, a curious mixture of irritation and pity settling in his chest. When he turned back to the restaurant, he was surprised to find the patrons breaking into spontaneous applause. The newly engaged woman approached him, her fiancé in tow. That was the most dignified handling of Karen I've ever seen, she said with a warm smile. Thank you for not letting her ruin our engagement celebration. Or our anniversary, added an elderly couple who had been coming to the Rustic Vine since its opening day. The officers preparing to leave paused beside Alex. Nice place you got here, a senior officer remarked. Might bring my wife for our anniversary next month. Should I make a reservation? Alex laughed, the tension of the confrontation finally dissipating. Definitely recommended, and the first round will be on the house. As the officers departed and the regular buzz of conversation resumed, Jenna sidled up to Alex with a bemused expression. 3 weeks had passed since the Karen incident, as it had come to be known among the Rustic Vines staff. Business had continued as usual, although Alex noticed an uptick in reservations. Apparently, word of mouth about his handling of the situation had spread through Portland's close-knit foodie community. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, Alex was in his office reviewing supplier invoices when Jenna knocked on his door, her expression a mixture of amusement and disbelief. You need to see this, she said, placing her tablet on his desk. Alex glanced at the screen and felt his stomach drop. Displayed prominently was a 1-star Yelp review for the Rustic Vine, posted just hours ago by none other than Margaret P. Pretentious establishment with subpar service and an arrogant owner, Alex read aloud, his voice flat. Was turned away despite visible empty tables and then threatened with police action when I simply asked to speak to a manager. Avoid at all costs unless you enjoy being humiliated in public. He scrolled down to see that Margaret had also posted similar reviews on Google, TripAdvisor, and every other platform she could find. Several included embellished details that hadn't occurred, including accusations that Alex had used profanity and made derogatory comments about her appearance. She's trying to tank us, Jenna said, folding her arms. What are we going to do? These reviews are already getting traction. Look at the comments. Indeed, several people had responded with outrage on Karen's behalf, vowing never to visit the Rustic Vine. A few even claimed to have witnessed the incident and corroborated her false version of events. Alex leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. Rather than anger, he felt a curious sense of challenge awakening within him. Remember when I said I was curious to see what would happen next? He said. Well, now we know. Jenna raised an eyebrow. And you're not worried. Oh, I'm concerned, Alex admitted, but also inspired. He stood up and walked to the small window overlooking the bar area, where the afternoon staff was preparing for the evening service. Margaret Peterson isn't just any entitled customer. Her husband is on the city council, and from what I've been able to learn, she's deeply involved in local charity organizations. The Petersons donate to half the cultural institutions in Portland. All the more reason to be worried, Jenna pointed out. Alex turned back with an unexpected smile. Or all the more reason to be strategic. I think it's time for some malicious compliance. Meaning we're going to give Margaret exactly what she wants, but in a way she never anticipated. He reached for his phone. First, I need to make a few calls. 2 days later, Richard Peterson was enjoying his morning coffee when his assistant buzzed through on the intercom. "Councilman, there's an Alexander Chen here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's quite insistent." Richard nearly choked on his coffee. "Chen? From the wine bar?" "Yes, sir. He says it's regarding your wife's recent online reviews." Richard closed his eyes briefly, a headache already forming behind his temples. Margaret had been particularly pleased with herself after posting those reviews, convinced she had struck a righteous blow against perceived injustice. He tried to suggest that perhaps she was overreacting, which had resulted in 3 days of frigid silence. "Send him in," Richard sighed. Alex entered the office with a confident stride, dressed in a crisp suit rather than his usual bartender's attire. He carried a sleek leather portfolio and wore an expression of polite determination. "Councilman Peterson." Alex greeted him with a firm handshake. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." Richard gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Mr. Chen, I confess I'm not entirely surprised to see you. I assume this is about Margaret's reviews?" "Partially," Alex acknowledged, taking his seat. "But more importantly, it's about an opportunity that I believe might interest both you and your wife." Richard's brow furrowed. "An opportunity?" Alex opened his portfolio and slid a glossy proposal across the desk. The cover featured the Rustic Vines logo above the words Community Partnership Initiative, turning criticism into collaboration. "What exactly am I looking at here?" Richard asked, cautiously flipping through the first few pages. "A proposal," Alex explained. "After your wife's feedback, I took a hard look at our establishment and realized she had inadvertently identified a gap in our community engagement. The Rustic Vine has been successful with Portland's younger demographic, but we failed to connect meaningfully with the philanthropic community that forms the backbone of this city's cultural identity." Richard looked up sharply, surprised by this unexpected approach. "Go on." The evening of the inaugural charity wine tasting arrived with perfect late spring weather. The Rustic Vine had been transformed for the occasion. The regular tables rearranged to create an open, flowing space, elegant floral arrangements adorning every surface, and soft jazz from a live trio filling the air. Local winemakers had donated their finest selections, and the waitstaff circulated with artfully prepared appetizers designed to complement each pour. Outside, a discreet red carpet led to the entrance, where Alex stood greeting guests alongside an unexpected companion, Margaret Peterson. "Councilman Whitley, Mrs. Whitley, so pleased you could join us," Margaret said warmly, embracing the older couple. "I've seated you near the Hendersons, as I know you're both involved with the children's hospital expansion." Alex watched with barely concealed amazement as Margaret effortlessly worked the crowd, her previous animosity toward him and his establishment seemingly forgotten. She wore an elegant black dress offset by a statement necklace featuring Oregon Mine sunstone, a deliberate nod to the evening's local theme. Jenna appeared at Alex's side, champagne flute in hand. "I still can't believe she accepted your offer," she murmured. "What kind of black magic did you work on her?" Alex shook his head slightly. "No magic, just psychology." The truth was both simpler and more complex than that. Richard had presented Alex's proposal to Margaret exactly as promised, and after her initial suspicion and outrage, something unexpected had happened. Margaret had recognized the opportunity for what it was, a chance to save face while gaining genuine influence. Within 24 hours, she had contacted Alex directly, requesting a private meeting at the Rustic Vine to discuss terms. That meeting had revealed a side of Margaret that few outside her inner circle ever saw: shrewd, detailed, and surprisingly knowledgeable about both wine and nonprofit administration. "I know exactly what you're doing," she had told him bluntly after reviewing his proposal. "You think you're being clever, turning my criticism into free publicity. And you're considering my offer because," Alex had prompted. Margaret had fixed him with a calculating stare. "Because I'm smarter than you think. This arrangement benefits us both. You get the positive PR and connections to Portland's old money. I get to demonstrate my expertise and expand my philanthropic portfolio." She'd extended her hand. "So, partners." Now, watching her work the room with practiced charm, Alex marveled at the transformation. The woman who had demanded his arrest just 2 months ago was now effectively serving as the face of his business to Portland's elite. As the evening progressed and the fundraising total climbed higher, Richard Peterson made his way to Alex's side, a glass of Pinot Noir in hand. "Impressive turnout," the councilman remarked. "Margaret's been talking about nothing else for weeks." Alex nodded. "She's exceeded every expectation. The guest list, the wine pairings, the charity selection, all her doing." Richard sipped his wine thoughtfully. You know she hasn't taken down those reviews. I never asked her to, Alex replied. No, but most people would have made that a condition of this partnership. Alex turned to face Richard fully. This was never about the reviews. It was about recognizing potential where others might only see conflict. Your wife has an exceptional talent for organization and influence, talents that were working against my business. Now they're working for us both. Richard studied him with newfound respect. You're an unusual businessman, Mr. Chen. Alex, please. Alex, you could have pressed charges that night or filed a defamation claim over those reviews. Why take this approach instead? Before Alex could answer, they were interrupted by the gentle tapping of a knife against crystal. The crowd quieted as Margaret took center stage near the bar. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your overwhelming generosity tonight, she began, her voice carrying confidently through the space. I'm delighted to announce that we've raised over $30,000 for Portland's youth arts programs. Appreciative applause rippled through the crowd. Before we continue with our evening, I'd like to say a few words about our host. Margaret's gaze found Alex in the crowd. Alex, Chen, and I didn't exactly meet under the best circumstances. Quiet laughter filtered through the room. The story of their first encounter had become something of a local legend. In fact, Margaret continued with surprising candor. I behaved abominably and then tried to damage his business when my behavior backfired. Many of you probably saw my reviews. An uncomfortable silence fell as the guests exchanged glances, uncertain where this confession was leading.